A strong economy is essential to build a nation in all respects and for the betterment of society. No doubt about this, but that's not everything. If I were to get ill, I would like to be taken to a very well-equipped hospital with highly skilled doctors, of course. But I would like to be treated by someone with high ethical standards and empathy. A highly trained, unethical doctor is a danger to everyone. This holds good for the entire world and all its people. We need a strong economy, but tempered with strong values. That's what great leadership brings, strong growth with empathy and human values. Striking a balance is going to be a big challenge as we emerge from this pandemic. I now look at two great leaders, Abraham Lincoln and our own Mahatma Gandhi, for the importance of values in life. Abraham Lincoln was the 16th President of the United States between 1861 to 1865 and is consistently ranked as the greatest US President ever. He was born on 12th February 1809 in a log cabin, the second child of Thomas Lincoln and Nancy Hanks Lincoln in Hudsonville, Kentucky. Abraham Lincoln lost his mother when he was very young, and the family moved to Indiana where his father was a carpenter and did odd jobs for a living. The family was very poor, and hence Abe Lincoln had no opportunity for formal school education. Thomas Lincoln married again, and Abe Lincoln's stepmother taught him to read and write. Lincoln was mainly doing farm work initially and became tall and strong. Lincoln was primarily self-educated and was an avid reader and had a natural ability for public speaking. His wit was well known and people flocked to hear him. He was a crowd puller, and this enabled him to join politics in the year 1832 when he was only 23 years old. He lost the smaller county elections initially and was struggling financially. He managed to get a job as a postmaster of a small town in Illinois and sustained himself. He then decided to become a lawyer and studied law all by himself with borrowed books and was inducted into the Bar Council of Illinois. He moved to Illinois, married Mary Todd, and started a family. Lincoln had a successful law practice and had a huge clientele as he was very hardworking and sincere. He stood for elections in the Illinois district and lost many times. Many failures, both in his private and public life, especially the death of his second son, only strengthened Lincoln's resolve. During this period in the US, slavery was very common and part of the social fabric. Many people considered this wrong but could do nothing about it. Slavery was commenced in the 17th century mainly by the British, French, and Spanish sugarcane farmers in the Caribbean. Gradually, these enslaved people were brought to the 13 British colonies or Eastern Seaboard region, which later became part of the US. Since then, slavery was allowed by law, and this social evil continued to exist mainly in the southern US for more than 100 years. Slaves were sold at open auctions. Families of slaves were indiscriminately separated and sold away as cattle, never to be united again. These slaves endured untold physical and mental abuse, and generations of slaves existed in the southern states of the US. Abraham Lincoln was very much against slavery and always said, "If slavery is not wrong, nothing is wrong." While in law practice in the year 1852, he became dismayed to find additional land in the US was opened for slavery by the unjust Kansas-Nebraska Act. He then returned to active politics in 1854 and by sheer grit and determination became the leader of the Republican Party by taking a strong anti-slavery stance. Lincoln ran for president and won the election in 1860. His victory rattled the pro-slavery elements who wanted to split the country, calling for the southern states to become the Confederate States of America. This plunged the nation into a bitter civil war. It was during this bitter war that he made his famous address on the battlefield in Gettysburg. He stirred the conscience of the nation when he said that the death of the soldiers who fought in the battle should not go in vain. He also called for nationalism, equal rights, liberty, and democracy. He ended his only 2-minute speech saying, and I quote, "that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. The Union Army won the Civil War, which raged for over 2 years, and on 1st of January 1863, Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This was an executive order of the US President who, with a single stroke, changed the legal status of 3 million slaves from slave to free. He promoted the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, which outlawed slavery across the country forever on 31st of January 1865. He was assassinated 3 months later on 14th April 1865 by a Confederate sympathizer. Lincoln was a great emancipator. By putting his values first, he ended up losing his life for the cause. Mahatma Gandhi. It's so uncanny that the teachings of the Mahatma are so relevant today as we emerge from the pandemic. All of us as Indians know about our Mahatma, the father of our great nation. Rather than repeating his life history, I thought I would discuss some of his important, inspiring messages. The most important leadership quality of the Mahatma is that he led by example, and all that he preached, he practiced. He said, "My life is my message." He further exalted the people by saying, "You must be the change you wish to see in the world." How very true, especially in today's world. All of us say so many things, give so much advice, but seldom act on them. Mere lip service is of no use. Individual actions are vital for sustaining our planet against pollution, global warming, and as we are seeing now, even pandemics. All humans have a social responsibility, and the selfishness of even a few can be a problem. It is becoming apparent that we are all connected in this world. The Mahatma always spoke the truth and said, even if you are a minority of one, the truth is the truth. He firmly believed that if one is truthful, support came from all quarters. His early struggle in South Africa brought many supporters even when he was not well known. He said he listened to his inner voice of conscience and was able to be truthful at all times. He was a firm believer in non-violence and said, "I'm prepared to die, but there is no cause for which I am prepared to kill." He said this during his early days in South Africa after being beaten up by the police. He held on to this principle throughout his life, and even during his fight for independence of our nation. The protest against the British Empire was always non-violent. He was always upset when people used violence against the British. Even after the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, when British troops, led by Colonel Dyer, fired and killed 1,500 innocent people, including women and children, Gandhi called for restraint and never instigated the people to take up arms. He said, "An eye for an eye will only make the whole world go blind." His resolve to non-violence did not mean that he was not strong. He said, "You can chain me, you can torture me, you can even destroy this body, but you will never imprison my mind." Indeed, Gandhi went to prison many times and spent many years in prison. He could stir the nation even from his prison cell. Indeed, his acts stirred the conscience of all mankind. "In a gentle way, you can shake the world," he said. He also believed in ahimsa and kindness to all animals and said, "The greatness of a nation and its moral progress can be judged by the way its animals are treated." For building one's character, he said, "The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others." And said of forgiveness, "The weak can never forgive. Forgiveness is the attribute of the strong." And said, "A man is but the product of his thoughts. What he thinks, he becomes," making a call for people to always think good of others. His advice to young entrepreneurs and businessmen: "It's difficult, but not impossible to conduct strictly honest business." On customer care, he said, "A customer is the most important visitor on our premises. He is not dependent on us, we are dependent on him. He is not an interruption in our work, he is the purpose of it. He is not an outsider in our business, he is a part of it. We are not doing him a favor by serving him, he is doing us a favor by giving us an opportunity to do so." The Mahatma's entire life was a sacrifice, and he won the greatest gift, freedom for all of us. He took very little for himself and said, "Earth provides enough to satisfy every man's needs, but not every man's greed." He lived a simple life in an ashram, spinning his own clothes and even cleaning the toilets. And when he died, he left no wealth, property, or even an official title. He is the Mahatma of great soul and resides in our hearts. Albert Einstein, speaking of Gandhi, said, "Generations to come will scarce believe that such a one as this, even in flesh and blood, walked upon this earth." The big question on everybody's mind is about life after the pandemic. Should we change or continue in the same extravagant and indulgent lifestyle that we have always lived so far? With this question, I leave you and thank you on behalf of the entire family of Soundra Pandian Bone and Joint Hospital for watching the 3 episodes of Leadership in World War III.